do less so you can do more. There is so much trivial, non-essential things nowadays that people let take up all of their time. And by doing this, they take away time that they could be putting into essential things. We need to do less so we can do less better. And Marcus Aurelius also came to this realization 2,000 years ago. He says, if you seek tranquility, do less. And you get the double satisfaction of doing less better. And there is, the trivial many and the vital few. And it's up to us to figure out what the vital few is. And it's up to us to figure that out so that we can spend our time doing the vital few, doing the essentials. And we'll get the double satisfaction of doing less, having tranquility because we're not scatterbrained, but also doing less better and being able to devote more energy into the things that truly matter, the things that truly, move you forward instead of spreading yourself thin in 100 different directions. Just go in one direction, focus on the essential, and you'll get a lot further and you'll get a lot more out of it. Now it's hard to do it's in this day and age, it's very hard to focus on the essentials with all the distractions and really just distractions that are out there nowadays, and how many social obligations we feel like we have. People ask us if we want to go somewhere, and we really don't want to go, but we think they want us to go, so we go. But in reality, they don't really care if we go or not, but they would feel bad if they didn't invite us. So we end up going to do something where, both parties don't really want to be there. And that's very, very sad. Very sad. And even if that's not the case, and they truly want you to go, if it's not essential, you need to say no. You have one life to live, and the time is your most valuable resource. And if you say yes to every opportunity that arises, you may have a lot of good opportunities. You may even have some great opportunities, but there's a good chance that when the best opportunity comes, you'll be preoccupied with something else, or you'll have a obligation to be doing something else, and you won't be able to say yes to the truly best opportunity and the best use of your time. And you probably won't be prepared for it either, because you will have been wasting so much time on non-essential, trivial things. And another distraction, non-essential nowadays, is social media. Think about how much time you've spent on, Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or anything of that nature. Even YouTube, depending on the content you're consuming, could be very trivial. Of course, not my content, but other people's. But yeah, just if you were able to see at the beginning of the year, like, how much time you would spend on all of social media, you would probably like throw up. You'd probably think it's disgusting. And imagine how much time you could put into doing other things, like, reading books and writing, doing literally anything other than just doing your main thing. Everyone's main thing is different, but if you spent your time, doing your main thing instead of, you know, consuming all of this content and getting distracted, it's insane how an hour can just go by like that on social media. Now, I don't have really social media anymore. I very rarely use it, and it's not on my phone. I have to re-download it, so there's a little barrier there because usually I never do, but occasionally I will. But it's been years since I've been trapped in it for hours, and I remember when I used to do that, how bad I would feel after. I'd be like, I don't remember anything I just consumed. I just lost like 2 hours of my life, and I got nothing good out of it. But now, if I have 2 hours to spare, I read a book, and then I get very good lessons. I feels like a good use of my time. And something I also enjoy is how time seems to slow down when you're in pursuits like that. An hour on your phone just scrolling can go by, feels like in an instant. But an hour reading, you know, it can go by fast, especially if you're enjoying the book. But, it's like usually an hour doesn't just creep up on you. Like you're aware of time, you're in the present, you're in the moment, and, time moves slow. And that's, I think, a beautiful thing in a day and age where time just seems to keep getting faster and faster. To be able to do pursuits that slow time down, allow you to become present, let your mind really engage, I think that's very valuable and something we should really seek instead of mindless doom scrolling. But I just really want to stress the point in this video that we need to do less so that we can do more. Do less of the inessentials so we can do more of the essentials. And when we do less, we will do less better. And with the finite existence that we have, we need to do less better. We don't have time to do everything. We don't have time to do a million different things and be good at all of them. We barely have time to do one thing very well. And it's been hard for forever, people trying to just do one thing well with all the distractions. And I'd argue it's harder than it's ever been nowadays with having the phone and, social media, texting, things of this nature at our hip always. We don't need to get bored. We don't need to focus on one task. The second we get bored with this, we can go to that. The second we get bored with that, we can go to this. And we never, hammer the nail on one task. We just spread ourselves thin in so many different ways. And I think it's very profound how Marcus Aurelius says, if you seek tranquility, do less. It does seem like the need to do more and constantly do takes us away from tranquility. And I think it's very telling, the fact that we are human beings and not human doings. We just need to be, and we don't need to do. Yes, as I said, do the essentials, but so few things are essential. And the things that are essential sometimes don't look essential. Like if you're, say you're writing a book and you think, all right, the essentials is sitting at my desk, putting pen to paper. And yes, a book will never get produced without that, or typing. You'll never get a book, but sometimes the most essential thing you can do is go for a walk. Go for a 2-hour walk and think about what you want to talk about, because, as Nietzsche said, the only ideas worth anything are ideas had while walking, which I don't know if that's true, but it very well may be, because it seems like to me that most of my best thoughts and ideas come while walking. And he also said, never trust a thought that happens inside. And I also think that's pretty, maybe not true, but I mean, a lot of my thoughts don't happen inside, they happen outside. Good thoughts, at least. So I think it's good to remind ourselves that what is essential doesn't always look like what is essential. Sometimes the best thing you can do to improve your business is, taking a week off. Sometimes the best thing you can do to grow muscle is taking a deload week. Even though it looks like you're doing less, looks like you're slacking, looks like you're not doing the essentials, to actually move forward and progress, you are doing that which you need to do. So I think it's also very hard to figure out what the essentials are. And that's why we need to take time and think and ask ourselves, is this truly essential? Marcus Aurelius talks about this so much in Meditations, about just doing the essentials, being intentional, not wasting your time. Time is our most valuable resource. Without time, we have nothing. We literally have nothing. If you took away time, you would have nothing, because you would everything would cease to happen. So say, if you think, oh, time's not the most valuable thing, it's money. Well, if you took away, if you gained all the money in the world and you took away your time, you would die. You wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Or if time just stopped, it wouldn't matter how much money you had. But if you have time, you can make the most money in the world, or you can spend a bunch of time with loved ones, or you can go experience a bunch of things. So time is our most valuable resource, and how we spend time is how we spend our lives. How we spend each moment, accumulates into how we spend our lives. And people who waste their days waste their weeks, and then people who waste weeks waste months. People who waste months waste years. People who waste years waste their life. So it's very essential to really ask yourself what you're doing, and also to remember that a yes here is a no somewhere else. So if someone asks you, hey, do you want to do this thing? And you say yes, I'm not saying you can't say yes. I'm not saying that at all. But you have to realize the trade off. There's only trade offs. If you say yes here, you are saying no to this. If you say yes to a weekend trip skiing, then you're saying no to, a weekend with your family, or a weekend, writing your new book, or a weekend, going for walks and working. And I'm not saying one or the other is better. I mean, I think because like I said, sometimes the ski trip is essential. Sometimes you've been cracking away at this project for, say a year, and you haven't taken any breaks. Like, yeah, you probably should get a break and just let your mind, you know, um, work through some of the problems you've been having, because sometimes that is essential and that is what you need to do. But you need to have the wisdom to know when it is and isn't essential. And every weekend it is not essential. Every other weekend it is not essential. But maybe, a couple times a year it's essential. So I think you just really need to ask yourself that, and to remember a yes here is a no there. And because you only have so many yeses. I love the idea of, being a slow yes and a quick no, because we feel so wrong when we take back what we said we were going to do. But we don't feel bad if we say, let me think about that. Or just say no, and then, come back to them the next day and you're like, no, I was actually thinking about that and I would like to go. But if you say yes, it's so much harder to go back on your word, because no one likes going back on their word. So be a slow yes and a quick no. And I also love the idea of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. If you don't really want to do it, if you're not, the second you hear it, you're just like, yes, then it's a no. You don't truly want to do it. You don't truly want to waste your time doing that action. And yeah, sometimes it sucks to go back on your word and to tell people no after you already told them yes, but you have to remember, this is your one life. This is the one life you have, and all your life is time. So if you really don't want to do something, there's no need to give a day, 2 days, a week of your time to it, because you're just wasting your life doing things that you don't want to do. You need to have the courage to live a life true to yourself, not the life others are expecting you to live. And to do that, we need to say no a lot and not feel bad for it. I forgot who said it, but they said no is a complete sentence, which I love, because if you say no to someone, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to say, no, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's like, no, I don't want to. There's nothing wrong with that. And if they're your real friends, or if they really love you, they'll understand. So do yourself a favor and do less so you can do more, and do less better, and tranquility will follow, as Marcus Aurelius says.